Cool.
Hooray. Hello, Facebook.
Hello, Facebook.
Hello. So now I'm going to share in a group, and we are going to share to the Design for Geeks group post. And yes, it's successful. And now, and also, because Kim Doyle is our great beloved friend, we're also going to post in Content Creators with her permission. So I think we're now, yes, it's been successfully shared with Content Creators. So here we are. Hello, Facebook. Hello, everyone. Hello, Geeks. Hello, Content Creators. And it's Piccia Neri here from Design for Geeks. Today, talking to the wonderful Dickiebirds agency. Paul, Lacey and Peter, you say your own surname, please.
Wesołowski.
Wesołowski. Okay, it's all right. I can't. It's not too bad. Yeah. Okay. Good. And we're going to talk about UX for everyone, and this came from listening to Paul a couple of weeks ago talk on the wonderful, amazing WP Builds podcast about UX, and so many of the things that he said resonated, and I got really excited because even though I cannot call myself a UX expert because that takes much more, but I am really fixated on good UX, or my version of it, and I study it all the time. Well, I always say really taught course create Casabona, which was brilliant because it's about doing it for people, small budget clients. And then tomorrow, as it were, there's also a local UX like thing that I'm going to. So it's all about UX these days. So I thought, fantastic, let's get them on. Let's get the mythical, legendary Dickiebirds studio in its entirety on the Design for Geeks live talks. And here you are. Thank you so much. And now over to you.
Okay, I'll start, shall I? Yeah,
please.
I'll introduce myself first because Peter here is the podcast version, or Facebook Live version. So I'm Paul. I'm one of the founders of the Dickiebirds studio. We've been going for 10 years, but we recently relaunched Dickiebirds about almost this time last year. We've got photos of us kind of hanging out in our old office, thrashing out the details and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about me and my backstory of WordPress and all that sort of stuff, because some of you might have already heard it about 15 times already, so I don't want to bore you all with it again. But just to say that in terms of our agency, we're a 4-person team. Me and Peter are the co-founders, and I'm more of the WordPress side of things, and that's probably why, I'm sort of addicted to Facebook and all these sort of things, because we all hang out there. And Peter does a completely different thing to WordPress stuff like what I do, but I'll let him introduce himself. But the cool thing is our skills just totally complement each other. Well, his skills definitely complement mine and make me appear clever to people when I'm talking to them and stuff. So
those are the best friends.
We are buddies. We've been really good mates for over 10 years now. But I'll let Peter fill himself in. It's worth Peter just filling you in on his kind of backstory as well, because it's a pretty funny one and it's pretty interesting as well, before we get talking about user experience design and all that sort of thing. So I'll hand over to you. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, people. So I'm Peter, or Piotr. Came from Poland. I was born in Poland quite a long time ago. Let's skip this detail. And well, my journey with graphic design start with art studio or on Commodore 64.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It was my first computer. My dad bought it to me in Germany, I believe. And when all my friends used to play, I wanted to do something more. And that's how I first try graphic design. Well, it was graphic. It was mostly pixel art because those two wasn't very good. So after that, I decided that I would like to go. I would like to go with computers in my life. Well, computer science and uni.
Wow.
Here we go.
So he's also clever, not just creative. Amazing.
Yeah, when we met, Peter was a developer, actually.
Wow.
So we've reversed the roles pretty much, but yeah.
Yeah.
How interesting. That's great. And I tell you why I really like this is because I was always told, especially by developers, that designers and developers have a completely different sort of not even a mindset, sort of the way your brain is structured, and there's no way that a designer could ever learn coding or, you know, and I always didn't, you know, and I think they were saying that so that I wouldn't even try. So, you know, but then when I approached WordPress, I realized that actually I didn't need to learn, and I am so glad that I did. And even though I will never be a full-blown developer, I'm not nowhere close, but actually learning to code a bit has improved my life. And what you are saying proves that this is true, that you can be both, or you can switch or swap or dabble into, not dabble, you know, be good at both, really.
Well, yeah, to be honest, first I thought I will be a software developer. So I decided to, well, I started to learn C++. Well, I started from BASIC on Commodore. Then was C++. And but at some point I've discovered HTML. And at the beginning, to be honest, at the beginning, I thought it is stupid. Yeah, because that was the time when I discovered Front Page, Microsoft Front Page, which was terrible tool, very terrible. But back then I thought, oh my God, I'm a king of the world. I can do anything with that. Well, yeah, I couldn't. So at some point, I had to create my own code. And that's how my journey with websites started. My first website was something about assembler for uni. I didn't want to learn this, so I decided to create a website for that. So my teacher gave me an A for that. So yeah, that was my way back then. But after then, well, I've landed my first proper job after uni as a network admin. And the company I used to work for, they wanted to create a new website for them. So I said, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, why not?
Right.
Yeah, that's how I learned PHP back then. And I've created, back then it was the biggest Polish catalog for professional tools. And that was my first professional website. Yeah, building this catalog, I've met my wife even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy how like the journey of web design creates these?
Yeah.
You meet your wife along the way, just creating your first website. Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And well, and at some point, I started to really like HTML and especially CSS because I've noticed how many possibilities it can give me. So I started to study CSS more and more, and in the time when main browser was Internet Explorer 6, I wanted to start doing website without using tables. So back then it was something completely new.
That's amazing. Sorry, can I just say that if you see me looking somewhere else, either to the side or down, it's because I'm just checking whether people are leaving comments, because I can see, it's quite difficult to check. Anyway, We've got 7 people watching, and I have no idea. It doesn't look like anyone's made any comments. But anyway, just to say, if people have questions or want to say anything, please leave a comment. Sorry, back to you. Yes.
After that, after creating this my first proper website, I wanted to do something more. I've met a guy, Tomek, fantastic guy. He's graphic designer, UX designer as well right now. But back then he was fantastic graphic designer. I was coder, so we decided that it's time to start our own company. We started in the basement.
Typical.
Yeah, in Poland. And after 1 year, I must say, we went bankrupt.
Also typical.
Yeah. So, but I was lucky enough to meet Paul. Then, when I went bankrupt, it was time I met Paul. Paul started to send me some projects for WordPress projects, and I was mostly developer back then, so he used to send me some designs, and my job was to make those designs into WordPress websites. And after a few months of working with Paul, I knew that most of those designs wasn't very good. And I work with Tomek, a very good graphic designer. So he showed me a few things, how to design proper websites. So I decided that, okay, it's time to start doing this on my own. And that's how I went into graphic design. And
so you are, I mean, because what I'm doing with the Design for Geeks group and website and courses, when I do them, when I have the time to do them, it is exactly this. It's sort of bridging the gap between designers and developers. And the point is that I really believe that we need one another, and that if developers learn about design, it will make them better developers. And I really believe that there are certain processes, as for instance UX, that apply to both design and development. And for instance, design thinking, which is a thought process, is definitely applicable to developers. And also my point is also that development, because it's problem solving, it's design. You don't use visuals, but you're still designing, you're planning, but because designing is planning and it's solving problems. So that's my point. So that's why I think your stories are perfect to sort of fit the Design for Geeks kind of agenda and manifesto perfectly. So it's really great. And also, so how would you say that you then got to UX? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling that you're the one who's, Peter, you're the one who's actively doing UX more than Paul.
When I started doing my own designs, I've noticed that there can be a lot of things improved then. But back then, when I started, we haven't called this UX design. Back then, we used to call this usability and accessibility of the websites. When we started, there wasn't even a responsive website.
No.
But I remember when I created CSS, I tried to prepare always CSS code for mobile phones as well, even back then. So my first website wasn't responsive, but were proper displayed even on mobile phones, on old Nokias.
It's like I remember people talking about websites being liquid or fluid, and it was more usually about them getting bigger. Like, you know, Amazon was like full width for one of the first full width ones, and we didn't really use responsive. It was fluid and liquid, and I remember
I remember taking courses on all that, and to this day fluid and liquid. Not sure what
Yeah.
I can't remember what the difference was, but anyway, yeah.
You're totally right there. I mean, you know, me and Peter have been working together over 10 years, and we have changed our roles completely over time. So, you know, so when we reformed Dickiebirds a year ago, Peter probably found it quite funny that I was known in the WordPress community more as a designer. He would have found that quite amusing, you know, and you know, Tom Eck, our friend from years ago, who was in the original Dickiebirds team, he's on the original website that you can find on the Wayback Machine and everything. You know, he probably found it funny that Peter was a designer as well. But as you learn the different things, you evolve, you fill the holes that you need to move forward in any way, and you just suddenly realize, oh, you're actually quite good at this thing, and you didn't realize you were. And the more that you interact with other people and get ideas and little blueprints and frameworks to work within, the easier it gets. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today was that this stuff isn't rocket science. You don't have to be a designer. You don't have to be a developer. This stuff that we're talking about today is useful for project managers, salespeople, developers,
marketers. It's marketing, branding. Yeah. Basically UX also. I think that, you know, if we will try and now answer the question that what is UX? Basically UX is not design. When you're doing the UX process, you're not designing. Then the findings of the UX process go to the designer who designs the UI and the well, maybe you do wireframes in the UX process, but you're not designing when you're doing UX. So I think that's very important that people don't know this. So if you had to say, what is UX, or what is the UX process, I would say, rather, how would you define it if you had to?
Well, for me, well, you can find definition on the Wikipedia probably, but I don't think any of UX designer actually remember this definition. For me, UX design is building product with customer in mind, with user in mind. So we are building for user, not building for just for business, but mostly for user.
Okay,
when you remember about this, you are able to deliver really good product.
Exactly.
So this coincides perfectly with the design thinking process, way of working, which the definition is put the user at the center and sort of human-centered and with humans at its center, the user at its center. And as a result, I also often remind people that UX, which stands for user experience, is not just digital, it's also offline. So when you are creating anything for a business, I think that what we all need to, well, with big companies, maybe they're already aware of that, but I think that many of us have smaller clients, and what we need to make them aware is first of all that we're not designing specifically for them, but we should really be designing for their users. That's the first thing that you need to persuade them of, and then also to make them understand that it goes beyond. It's not just digital. An example can be, for instance, WP Elevation, which is a business course for agency owners and freelancers. And what they do when you sign up is they send you a present at home with a nice little handwritten letter. That's user experience. So it goes offline. It's not just online. And this is a good example because WP Elevation is a purely online business. I mean, they do events as well, but so, or for instance, with Apple, the user experience is also the shop, things like this. So it's not just the digital experience.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Even unboxing of Apple products
is part of the experience.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's where Amazon, for instance, is crap because you buy something this big and they send it in a box this big. So and you go, why? It's you're making me feel bad because I've done something bad for the environment that's UX. There's so many things that if you start looking around, you realize that actually that counts for UX.
Yep.
And that's why it's not just for designers.
That's it. I mean, we we were talking yesterday, that's what you can see, all the scribblings on our board up there, about this whole thing, about where you, because I think one of the problems is you know, like when I had that discussion with Nathan and David on the Dickiebirds podcast, Nathan, if he's listening, was kind of in denial that he was doing any user experience design. But through to the end of the discussion, it turned out that he was doing lots of user experience design, but he just hadn't created that as a framework in his mind, that it was more of a kind of just how he does stuff. But he just, so it wasn't that he wasn't doing it, he just hadn't called it anything, which is absolutely fine. And we were looking last night, which is what we were thinking we could go through now, really, is the whole kind of the typical process of a web design project. But actually you could, this doesn't have to be web design, but we've kind of framed it in our mind as like web design, because that's what, you know, half of our business does. The normal process that everyone is already used to for web design, and where user experience thinking, not necessarily skills, just the idea of thinking about the user helps you from every single stage, from even the stage of, you know, pre-qualifying your clients through to getting more money for your projects. And also, so if the client is in the mindset of thinking about the user, they will be more likely to reinvest in the website that you provided for them after. Because one of the most frustrating things I used to have, we used to do a lot of websites for you know, local government, and we would do the website. The councillor or the local government officer would come along with the local mayor, have the photo taken. That photo would go in the local paper. That's the last you ever heard of that website. It was just you know, a big waste of money, and nothing ever happened. Whereas we find in that over the last year, our clients have changed because of what we've, a lot because of the processes that Peter's brought into Dickiebirds, which has allowed us to turn some of our kind of, you know, typical client user persona to be a better one than what we had before, purely because we're taking them through a process and they're not even aware they're going through that process. They just appreciate all the things more. So do you want me to go through that?
Yes, that would be brilliant, please. Yes. So yeah.
So some of us have done WP elevations, some of us haven't, but we probably all do a similar sort of process to that to some extent or another. So the first thing that always tends to happen with a website is you get an incoming lead. So someone contacts you, it might be a referral, or it might be via an advert, or however it is, or a friend, and you get this really annoying question, which is super difficult to answer, which is, you know, I want this website, this is my company name, how much will it be for the website? So you've got an incoming lead and you've got this question, it's super difficult, it puts you on the defensive, and how do you respond to that? And we were talking about this in terms of,
well, you should start with asking the basic question, like who are the users of this product? What do they need? And what your business need? Because at the end you will need to combine those two things: what user need and what business needs.
Exactly.
That's the designing of proper good product.
And you don't need to term it like that to your client. So that's what we want to know. We want to know what the user needs and what the business needs. But we also want to pre-qualify that lead. So we want them to jump through a bit of a hoop to make sure that they're prepared to do this properly. So we want to ask them a couple of questions like that. So you can rephrase, you know, who are your users and what do they need to? So what's the purpose of your website? And what, for instance, who are the typical people who might go on your website, and what do you want them to do? So you're only asking like 2 or 3 questions, but you're just getting a rough idea of, are they even prepared to answer those 2 or 3 questions just off the back of one quick email? If they're not prepared to answer that question, or they kind of ask you for a meeting or whatever, and and just won't give you any information, then it's always been red flags for us. And so we've just started, if they won't jump through a simple hoop for us at the beginning, we just, unless we're desperate, which we haven't been this year, thankfully, you know, we have in years gone, and we just had to take everything we could or whatever. But, you know, now we can put those pre-qualifying questions out and get a quick idea of what they're interested in. So incoming lead, user experience questions, just rephrased into people and what's it for, can just help you just pre-qualify the lead straight away to see if it's worth moving forward with. And then a lot of people will do a discovery or strategy phase at that point. I've got my post-it notes here, so I'm just checking them. So it's something that a lot of us might know, called Go Wide, Go Deep. So for instance, I'm not going to explain what Go Wide, Go Deep is, but I'll, you know, hand over to Peter. But I mean, we're talking about a phone call or a video call, or you know, if need be, a meeting with the client, if your gut instinct says that that's what you should do, for no more than an hour. And so it only costs you an hour of your time. And if you're doing it over a video call or a phone call, then you would probably want to record that call and transcribe it as well, because that will pay you dividends right down the line. So you're giving up, you haven't made any money yet. So you're investing an hour of your time, or potentially like $50 or something for transcription fees or something. But you've already decided that the lead is worth investing a little bit of time in, because you pre-qualified them, they've jumped through a hoop and seem eager. But I mean, some of the things in discovery would be going wider and deeper on those questions for the first question. So I mean,
yeah, exactly. First of all, you need to learn everything you can about the product. So you need to prepare a proper interview with the business owner, with your client, about their product or service. And you need to realize what is the value for the user of this product or service. Yeah, because those are crucial things if you want to prepare really good design, to prepare a really good website, app, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are basic things.
Yeah.
I tend to, these days, I tend to sell the discovery process, because I'd much rather do it much deeper and sell it. It really depends from case to case. But so far this year, I've managed to sell quite a few discovery processes, because it means that probably, thankfully, I explain it really well. And that's how I position it. It's user experience. It's work that we do here now, and it saves us a lot of grief down the line doing things in the dark, because then when we get started designing, which actually happens much later, it's much quicker to design, because I've already found out all that I needed to find out. And because thankfully a lot of clients have said yes to that, because I've found that I liked less and less a sort of abbreviated version, because it means that I can do a proposal, but actually it's never going to be a good enough proposal. There's always going to be a bit of shooting in the dark because I don't know enough. And basically it's what it is. And it's so interesting. Even when you do say that, you're doing the way you say that you just give up an hour of your time, you do the simple questioning. It happened earlier this year with a client who came to me asking for help with Google Ads, which is not something I know about. I said, well, why do you want Google Ads? And I started, and she's like, well, we want more traffic. I said, well, why do you want more traffic? Well, our sales have gone down. Well, why have the sales gone down? Well, I don't know. But so what do you send the people to from your Google ad? And then I went to the website and realized that when the people went to they were just linking to a homepage that had absolutely nothing on it for the user to do. Nothing, zero, nothing. And any contact form was buried really deep. So I said, no, you don't need Google Ads, because then I looked at the analytics and they were quite good. So I said, you don't need Google Ads. You need to give your users something to do when they land on the website, because they come in droves and there's nothing for them, poor people. So that's an example of what you can find out. And actually you think about the user and you don't think about the Google, because that would be a normal thing to do. You just throw money at the Google Ads. But if you reframe it in a different way, then you find out what really needs to be done.
Yeah, that's the exactly thing we were talking about just before this conversation. I was explaining to Paul what's the difference between bad designer and good designer. So bad designer is doing exactly what he was asking for. So in that case, yeah,
I'm a good designer.
but good designer, good designer is
Great
looking for
designer.
a reason.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
trying to find out what is really wrong.
Yes, exactly.
That's the difference.
What's the example? Is Google, is it Gmail or something?
Well,
Is that
the
a real
example
example?
with Gmail and labels. Yeah, that for example, you have a designer for a Gmail, and you need to you were asked to that you've heard that users want to have possibility to add labels to their emails. And well, bad designer just add this possibility. Okay, designer may think that, yeah, okay, so maybe we can use some mechanism to get those labels from the text of the email, yeah. So we can well, you can help user to create those labels, but really good designer will start to look for a reason why the people need labels.
Yeah.
And people need labels because they cannot find anything.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, the current design of Gmail, I hate. I really hate it. It's so everything looks exactly the same. So anyway, apart from that, so but I always like to have a little rant against something during the talk because I have it's a soapbox.
Please don't get me started.
Yeah, so we've said, okay, first thing is identifying whether the client is right, and that's a form of UX. Let's say that now, then asking the questions, but let's say that now we're like, okay, fine, the client is on board.
Yep.
What is the process now?
So you've done a really good discovery phase. Ideally, like you've done, we haven't managed to do this yet. You've been paid for a discovery process, which I think is something like loads of us should aim for, because
it's UX.
Yeah, it's probably it's such a good investment for the client to do. So I think the problem is, a lot of us, including us, we haven't figured out a way to properly position that as a really high value product. So this is what the community is all about, learning how. So I'm going to be bending your ear to find out how you've been doing this.
Absolutely.
The more time you will spend on proper research, the less time you will need for designing.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's how one of the ways I position it, and I really insist. And it's been interesting that I've had so many people actually going for it, and even more interesting is sometimes they have found that they were not ready for the second phase, so they haven't actually gone forward with their recommendations.
Well, but, a lot of designers start designing process with blank canvas, with blank artboard. But that's wrong. The only point you should actually have the blank artboard is before you ask the first questions to the client. And then you should always have something on your plate, always.
So do you have a structure to the questions? Because I have a structure to the questions, and I change it depending on what the project is, if it's website, if it's branding, but and there's always marketing questions in there as well. So do you have a specific structure? Do you have a sort of fixed questionnaire that you send your clients and then discuss with them? Or?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, ours is quite based on WP Elevation, because I did that course this year, which I highly recommend to everybody, to be honest. And so mine's a modification of that particular technique that they teach in there. So I think our kind of questionnaire to our web clients is probably more around value realization as such. So it helps. It helps our clients understand what they're asking for, and then they realize the value of that thing that they're asking for. And we do actually do a questionnaire that's an online questionnaire. You can go and take a look at it if you want. It's at dickiebirds.studio/start, START. Feel free to go and fill that in. And then we do like that call that I was talking about, the 45 to 60 minute call, where we kind of do the go wide, go deep, or whatever technique, we're doing. We basically just, like you said, you're asking lots of questions, why, and then deeper, and why has this happened, until you find out, the real situation, what's going on there. And And that's where just my own sort of user thinking instincts kick in. And because I don't think Code Elevation talks too much about asking about the user so much, it's more about the business needs, because it's about getting the value of the project up a lot of the time. But with our own questions that we ask, we then sort of do the same exercise that you would do for the business needs with the user needs as well. And we just phrase it in a way that it feels comfortable for the client to understand. So Nathan, in the other in the podcast that we did the other day, I was talking about users, and he said, "Well, I call those people," and so that's fine. That's
call them whatever you want. Yeah,
you can call them users, visitors, people, potential subscribers, leads, prospects, customers, whatever you want to call them. Just describe them in the way that fits the conversation that you're going to have. So we do this questionnaire. We dig deeper with the users. And then we hopefully then win the proposal, and that's at the point where we start getting to work. And that's probably where the more actual user experience processes kick in a little bit more, the more known processes. So the first thing we'll do, and the thing I want to say about this is that some people might watch this and say, this sounds like a lot more work. I can promise you, having slogged away for 10 years as an agency and not done all this, and then in the last year started doing it properly, the massive difference it's made to...
I can't even imagine not asking questions. It's not, what am I going to design? What would happen is that you make it up and they say, oh, that's not what I wanted, because they haven't told you what they want. So it's the surefire way of not having any bad surprises is to ask as many questions as possible at the beginning.
The exact opposite is someone saying to someone, hey client, send me some websites you like and we'll do them like that. That's what we used. Sorry, that's not what you used to do, but that's what I might have been guilty of.
I still ask that because I need to get an idea of their taste.
The only question I used to ask.
But then I usually also destroy it for that. And just
of course.
But I can't do that because there's So what else do you ask then?
That was often the argue with us when Paul used to send me that the client wants to his website to do like that website, right? And show me some examples. And I was always pissed about this because I don't care. I don't want to know this. I don't need this. I know what to do.
We'd have actual arguments because I'd agreed with the client. As many people say that a designer will moan that their project manager has agreed something with the client, it's a stupid thing, and then I just have to say, look man, we're so far down the road with this, but we don't do that anymore, just to clarify that. So we don't.
So what's do you have a set of questions that you fire off as first thing?
So we get all the information that we need. I mean, in our setup, Peter isn't doing website work much with Dickiebirds. He's doing pure UX work for big clients on bigger long-term contracts. So it's more a case of his knowledge is feeding into my changing the way that Dickiebirds works on the WordPress side of things. So something I didn't used to do, which I do now, is user personas. And you can call those whatever you want. User personas and user journeys, and that's the next stage.
One second, I'm calling this, Paul called this the discovery phase, but I like to call this empathy.
Empathy, yes.
Exactly.
Which is design thinking. The first bit of the design thinking is empathy.
Try to walk in user shoes for some time. Try to put yourself in a user position. And that's why we need user personas, and that's why we need user journeys.
That's right. We've been hired for the job. How do we now even get started in figuring out what the solution is? We've gathered loads of information. We now need to start distilling that. So, I mean, do you want to mention about user journeys and personas?
So do you ask, can I just ask you, because the way I do it is I have, like I said, a number of questionnaires that vary depending if it's website and branding, if it's just branding, if it's just website, and so on. But all the questionnaires have a section for who's your target market, who are your competitors, Do you operate locally? You know, a lot of many questions, also including what are your tastes, you know, how are you going to advertise your product? What does your product do? Loads of questions like this before getting to, and I've recently started doing the personas as well, because I used to do them when I was working at the BFI. I worked a lot with the website department, and we did work with external agencies on user persona. So I've done it, but I hadn't done it in my business yet. And now that I really want to do it, because even though sometimes it's not clear to me in the absence of the real persona, the real person there, how I can reproduce that journey, which is something I want to ask you. But it's really useful for the owner, the business owner, to start thinking about who their users are, because if you start chatting about them, then you realize that actually they have different problems from what you thought. So in that sense, yes, it's really useful. But that I'm really interested in how you do it, because also let's not forget that the focus here is, what we're saying is UX for everyone, which we have been covering deeply. But I think that in my experience, the user persona, the user testing, I don't think is that difficult, but the user personas are the most difficult bit for a small business to implement, I feel.
It's difficult for them to figure out why they would even do this. But if you kind of take a real world example, you know, let's say you're a kind of web design company and you're stuck doing, you know, sort of, you know, between $1,000 and say $3,000 websites or something like that, then a typical common website that you might get asked to do is a personal trainer website, right? So a coach or a personal trainer. So it's like one person, and they're what they're spending on you is their holiday money potentially. So it's very difficult to swap the value of what you're asking to do for their value of their holiday in Tenerife or something, or wherever it is that they're going. So we came up with this, well, you came up with this, the idea of using a trainer, a fitness trainer for predominantly men, as a user persona example, to show how we might fresh that user persona out and how it will actually help us create a really good solution for the client that they will probably be far more likely to accept. We've had everything is getting accepted so much quicker these days because we're getting it right quicker. We're not getting it right straight away, but we're getting it right quicker. So in terms of what did we call him? Mike. Yeah, it's Mike.
So how do you know what Mike thinks? Because if you're not Mike and you're not a fitness trainer, so how do you know what Mike thinks when he interacts with the website?
That's the empathy phase. Yeah. So you need to try. It's completely abstract thinking. Yeah. At this point, so you're just trying to visualize Mike, and Mike is in fact not the personal trainer. Mike is the client.
Mike is the client of the trainer.
The personal trainer. So Mike is the guy, for example, who. It's the end of the year, and Mike decided that, yeah, from the new year, I need to get in shape. I need to do something with myself because I'm hitting 30. I'm still single. I need to find a girl, for example. I've got a good job. I've got a nice house. My BMW is fantastic, and I know I need to do something with myself. So what you need to think what Mike like and what Mike may be frustrated of. So for example, Mike
Facebook.
Yeah, Mike for example, Mike to share his photos on Facebook. So he's familiar with Facebook interface, for example. He knows and for example, how Mike using the internet. Yeah, how Mike's how Mike is using to get information about things. Mostly, in that case, it will mostly his phone, because he's at work. Yeah, of course, he may be working with computers, but not necessarily. He may be some in sales, for example. So he's using his phone to get information. So, for example, if you're trying to design something for Mike, you need to put mobile in first, yeah, because Mike would use mobile. And for example, Mike he's a type of guy who wants to get effects, who wants to see effects quite fast, yeah. So when you're designing a site for a personal trainer, you need to keep this in mind, that you need to show the actual results of your work to Mike. So this is the guy, for example, from the January, and this is the same guy on in the February, yeah. And
before and
look,
after.
before after photos, and look how fast you can do this, yeah. And for example, Mike is a vegetarian, and because it's cool, yeah, because that's Mike, yeah. Let's not judge him. So Mike is a vegetarian, and so he wants to be able doing his workouts, for example, and of course he realized that with workouts comes proper diet, but he don't want to eat meat. So you need to show those people that it's not only meat in this diet. You can seriously, you can do your workouts, you can get in shape even without meat, yeah.
So this is something that really anyone can do. You don't need to have the actual person. You don't need to be 30. You don't need to be Mike himself, but you can do it. And one really interesting thing is that often business owners are their target market. And my example that I just did this similar thing with was it's this boutique travel agency that only does the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and they have basically.
Is that the journey?
Sorry.
Is that the journey? The film with what's his name? The big walk where you.
Yeah, they did it. Yeah. I haven't seen it yet. But yes, that's the one. Yeah. So I got them to start thinking about who their users are, but they already. The reason why they started the company is because they loved it. They loved doing the Camino, and that's why they're successful, because they give people exactly what they wanted when they were doing the Camino as tourists. And then they became guides because they loved it, blah, blah, blah. But so when we started looking at the various personas, we realized that there were different ones that had different needs. It was like, there was the bossy older woman, but sometimes it really, the bossy husband as well, who doesn't, and these people have different needs. But this is a low budget client. It's not a big budget client, but just by talking to them, because they do know that target audience. So she got thinking, yeah, you're right. We need to we don't have a calendar on the homepage. I think that would be really useful, so people know exactly when they can go and when we have a trip planned, things like this. They will come up, and you can do it in conversations with your clients. You don't need to have a big budget for focus groups, or to spend 2 weeks in the gym so that you can actually speak to Mike, to the various mics that are in.
Yeah, exactly. But with personas, it's something that you can reuse them. So, for example, if you're creating some personas for one client, and if those personas will be suitable for example, for another client, you can just reuse them. Mm-hmm. So you can build your base of personas over the time. Yeah, so it's not a problem, and it's always good to from time to time to actually talk with people like your personas. So if you meet someone who is like Mike, for example, just talk with him. Just ask him.
Yeah, exactly.
What he likes, what he doesn't like. Just ask him. Just socialize a bit. Yeah, and believe me, it will help.
Because also, let's not forget, this is a marketing technique as well. Marketers use this, and branding uses this. So it's not just user experience. This process covers a lot of different areas. It's not just digital, as we said at the beginning. So also, people say that it's important to give these personas actual names, ages, places where they live, to really create someone that you can imagine, that you can, whose life you can, you know, they're very, very specific, not just generic people that are sort of, you know, oh, a middle-aged woman. No, what's her name? Does she have short hair? Where does she live? Things like this. You need to be specific.
It's good to put photo with each persona to help you visualize those.
Yeah. I've not actually done that. I know you guys do it on the bigger contracts and stuff, but I mean, the thing about it is as well, it's kind of fun. But if you think about in a kind of web design project, that's, you know, some people might be saying, oh, this sounds like a lot of work. Well, what's the opposite of that, right? The opposite of that is to go and look at 25 different example gym trainer websites and filter those down, filter it down to like 5 that you like, and then try and figure out what they've done. And do you know what you found out at the end? You found the best one that someone spent 15 to 20 minutes inventing Mike and putting the things on the website that Mike needed. And you've probably spent 2 days sitting in front of your laptop looking at 25 different sites just to try and reverse engineer a process that can take 15 to 20 minutes. You know, we invented Mike in a couple of minutes. You know, we could invent another persona in a couple of minutes. Lindsay, who's actually my wife and also works in Dickiebirds, she does most of the user persona work now because she doesn't do any web design. She doesn't do any programming. You know, she was originally, when we started Dickiebirds, just doing kind of accounting things. And now what we realize is she's now doing user journeys, she's doing user personas, and she's doing wireframing, and she's even doing copywriting now. So she's doing all these things. And the reason she can do that is because she's just figured out through us, you know, sharing knowledge amongst the team and watching things on YouTube and whatnot, that once you know user persona, you almost know what to write for them. You know what to present for them on a web page. And it's so much more easier than the opposite way that I've mentioned before of just trying to reverse engineering what someone did, you know.
So Peter, do you know, because basically the design thinking process, which is a specific process, I did a webinar on it and a few talks, but so the design thinking process is 5 phases. It's empathy. Then after empathy, there's defining the problem. Then after defining the problem, there's ideating, so creating the solution, then prototyping and testing, and it goes back. So that's the process, isn't it? Yes. It's the same. We're talking,
exactly.
So,
the ideating, we probably should have mentioned defining the problem earlier. We kind of forgot to mention that, but I'm glad you brought that up.
But that's what you do. That's it. So these are the phases, really. Empathy, definition, creation, ideation, prototyping, and testing. That's it.
That's it. You discover the problem often when you do this user persona and you figure out what is their problem. Why is Mike, you know, because the thing is, you know, it's not also our problem, and it's not at this point to decide how Mike finds your website. The fact is Mike will find a personal trainer website and one of them will answer the questions that Mike wants answering.
Exactly.
So you don't worry about if your website is or not. The most important thing is that for us as designers and UX people is that we have to make sure that the solution we provide is one of the ones that does answer the question for Mike. And that's when we go to the user flows and the user journey, which is a really fun stage. Again, it's not a big, long job. You can do it on, you know, we do it on the whiteboard when the whiteboard's full. I've got my own small whiteboard here that I just have down there. And
can you describe that? Because that's really interesting. So at what point would you do that?
I think once you know what the product is, and you know you've got Mike, and then you've got the product, and you know what the business need is. The user flow is kind of a diagram that just kind of shows how Mike goes from entering the website, which, like I say, isn't our problem, how he enters the website.
Yeah.
And then when Mike enters that website, what does he see? And how can as quickly as possible and easy as possible can we help him to make contact, if that's the thing that we want to happen, with the personal trainer. Now there's a lot more than just, you know, the Mike going to the website and then doing that. Mike might end up on an email drip campaign, or he might make a booking on a calendar. So you plan in all these things that a sitemap doesn't show. So a sitemap shows, you know, homepage, booking page, service page, whatnot. But a user flow shows more, the journey shows actually exactly what that person experiences. Is there anything you'd want to add to that?
No, I think, to be honest, I think you covered that.
Yeah, I'm learning.
Fantastic. Because also, which brings us back to whenever we plan a website and a homepage, the first question is, what do we want the user, what's the most useful thing for the user to do? And that it needs to coincide also with our need, with the business need, with where do I want my user to go? That's their thing. And that's what a lot of brochure websites don't think about, and they're completely ineffective. Like my travel agency's website, where, you know, they have a thriving business, and it's mysterious how, I mean, it's not thanks to the website for sure, because it doesn't answer that question. It's just a brochure that tells you what it is about, what it is about, but there's no facilitation as to the user journey.
We've got a client right now that has an app to do with fitness training. That's kind of why we keep thinking about it. It's not a fitness trainer. He has an app for a well-known fitness app, and gets, you know, 1 million hits on his blog posts every month. It's ridiculous, but it doesn't, you know, and when we saw that opportunity, we realized, oh my gosh, so if we can just apply, you know, some UX to this, his conversions to getting his app and then eventually up to the paid version of the app is going to be easy to improve it. We don't know what the figures are because we don't know what his current figures are, because he doesn't know either. But we know that the things that we would do, you know, we take Mike, for example, we know that on this website, we can answer those questions Mike's got way more than, and the good thing is when you've got 1 million users, you're in touch with quite a few of those. You know, they send you emails and stuff like that about what they're struggling with or how they.
Yeah.
So sometimes you find a perfect project for applying these things, and you know that it's going to really work and stuff. So fingers crossed on that one. But, But yeah, flows is the fun bit. It's the user persona, then the flows. That's a super fun part where you basically see the solution. Now, one of the things we haven't mentioned is editorial copy.
Yes, that's the next point, because when you create those user flows, you know exactly what to put on your website, on the website to help user to seamlessly finish this journey. But if you want this journey to be really good, you need proper copy.
I know. I reckon copy is the most difficult thing to persuade smaller clients.
Before you start to choosing fonts, colors, and background images and all this stuff, start with copy and design for content, not the other way.
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's
because
and also
when you've got proper content, when you've got proper user flows. Designing is a piece of cake. It's a fantastic process. It's a, oh my God, I love it. I completely agree. And also, which brings us to the definition of UI, because I think that people get confused with all these U's, and UI is user interface. Yeah, it's a graphic design, strict.
It's the graphic design. That's what it is. So, and that's why the process goes UX followed by UI. They don't. That's how it works. But during the UX phase, you don't design anything. You do. Well, you do if you think that of design in terms of planning, which is what I do. But you plan. It's the planning phase, and then you would do the wireframes as well in the UX. Would you say wireframes are part of the UX research? I would say they are. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Definitely, because with wireframes, of course, it's not necessary for each project, but when the project is a bit more complicated, it's good to create some kind of working prototype, clickable thing. So you can click through and check if all your designed user journeys add up, and if everything looks good there. When everything looks good there, then you can actually create proper graphic elements for the site. But if not, it's easier to change wireframes than to change whole design.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And then also the I don't know if you've heard, you probably have heard about the growth by design process, which is HubSpot promote it, and they have a free course on it. And again, it's a process that privileges there's like, say, 1 month research, then 2 weeks design or less, you know, and then you deploy a site that's actually sort of under designed almost, and then you tweak and improve with data. So you test, you get the data, and then you improve on it. And that has my complete approval, and that's how it should be done. And it still is, it's kind of what I've been doing. So all these things I sort of do instinctively, and I've sort of developed my own process to doing them. But that's what I'm now more consciously selling my clients, saying, let's get it launched, and then we'll see what needs to be done to improve, because I don't know yet. You know, I don't know. Well, I can know a little bit, but unless you know, I mean, how better information than the data, then, you know, seeing the actual behavior of your real users, that's something that's really important. And one thing that I would like to touch on is usability testing, which is also really important. And people go, oh, God, I don't have the budget for that. But that's something that really you can get your mate, your wife, your girlfriend, your not dog, but you know, you can get anyone to do usability testing, because
the thing is, usability is when you're doing wireframes. Then you should test your usability.
But that in that case,
not later. Later. Yeah, you can create some example for some simple prototype with your wireframes, and you can test your usability of your product. But as I said, graphic design should be the last part of it. Of course, after you create proper design, you should test it as well. But I don't think it should be proper usability testing. Proper usability testing should be on the face when you've got wireframes. That's because that's the usability.
You could do a light version of it as well, because, you know, and this is something I wanted to go back to, the content thing. If you haven't got content, which, you know, is going to be a massive amount of us just don't get that, no matter what techniques we try and, you know, voodoo magic to get that off the client, or we can't write it ourselves, we're going to find ourselves with no content when we're trying to design. So we have to try and make that up ourselves. So I don't think there's no UX process that can solve a client won't give you good copy. So my advice to people is, hey, how about you start thinking about offering basics of copywriting, not necessarily all of it, but start offering the basics of copywriting to your client. Because if your client can't do it at all, you can probably do it better than them, even if you're not. And
if you're not a copywriter,
I don't want to say that we are copywriters, but we've just, because that's a whole thing in itself that is super skilled. But what we've managed to do is add some budgets to clients' projects just to help them get better copy, because we know Mike better than they do. So we understand Mike a little bit better, and we can figure out the words that maybe Mike wants to read. In an ideal world, you'd be able to hire a proper copywriter to do that and explain that user persona to the copywriter. And that's the cool thing about this. At this point, you haven't done any design. You might just be the project manager, and you outsource everything. You've got a designer, you've got this, you got that. You can give this user persona and this user flow that you've done on the whiteboard or a piece of paper to your copywriter and your designer, and they both understand what they're working for. So you can give it to the copywriter, they create some first draft words, then the designer can get started with the words and the user profile, and we'll probably know. I did a website page in like 2 or 3 hours the other day, and Lindsay had done some basic copywriting, and I'd already got my wireframe drawn out on a piece of paper. Literally, it's a scrap of paper. It's down there, I think. It's literally just, I did it on my 4-year-old child's easel, because I was working at home and I didn't have anything else to work on. That's the kind of technology you need to do it. But if you haven't got the content, you are going to struggle. There's no way around it. I don't have an answer to that, but when we talk about wireframe,
no, it's the hardest. No. I find it the hardest because I am now persuading them to get SEO done, and then once that, I think that, well, they are obviously very closely linked, because if you get SEO, you're going to have to think about your copy, and that works because I've managed to persuade them of the importance of SEO. So that, especially if they're geolocated, if they're not online businesses necessarily, but so that's my entryway for the copy. Some of them are good enough. Some of them can actually write their own copy, but they just don't have the online mentality that we have. There are a lot of writers who are very good, but they would not be able to write a website because they don't know how to write for the web, and that's the picture. And that's the big difference. So I find that if you want to try that, try and tell them about the SEO, how important it is to be found online, to be found for the right things and so on, how that will skyrocket that business and so on. That seems to work. It hasn't got as far as actually getting them to copyright, but to buy copyrights and services, but it has got them to actually realize how important copy is, that it's not just a, paste on
No, exactly. And how do you know what someone's going to search for? Well, if you can imagine yourself in Mike's shoes, then it's going to help you. Again, the opposite is to go into some keyword tool and type in gym.
I can't work it out. I'm crap at it.
Huge list. But if you've got Mike in your mind, you can think, what would Mike type, into here as such. So in the wireframe stage, if you do the wireframe stage, I sometimes skip it. But when I do skip it, I do normally sketch it first, just so I can relax and listen to music at the same time as designing rather than thinking too hard. We will try to put the right copy into the wireframe, because that's that basic light user testing you can do. You can have a wireframe that could be just a sketch, but the words are right, even if it's just the headings, the titles, and the button text. And you say, hey, have a look. Could you just take a quick look at this for me? And imagine you are this person. That's all you have to do. Would you just have a quick look at this for me to a few people? Or upload it to a Facebook group. Would you just have a quick look at this for me? And imagine you are this person. And
can I just say something really interesting? Because I completely agree with you, and to me the copy should always be relevant. But when I was working, for instance, at the Sunday Times magazine, I used to be a freelance designer. Excuse me. I need to drink. Sorry.
I'm gonna have a drink break. So. Got some brandy. You out of brandy? Yeah. So whenever, if I did a designed it, so they said, there's an article on Lily Allen, these are photos, photo shoot by Rankin, and this is the angle. So design the spreads. And I would always put, and I didn't have the copy yet, but I would always put relevant or get the anyway, they always said, no, you can't do that, don't do it, you need to put absolutely dummy copy, because otherwise the editors will make a judgment on the copy and they shouldn't do that. So it was the opposite, and I always thought, this doesn't make any sense. How can you judge a design if the design is the content? I mean, the two things are so closely related that I can't do it. You can't design in a vacuum, because I don't know what I'm designing to if I don't do that. So it's a problem we all face, and I don't know if we'll ever solve it, that we will find ourselves as professional designers and copywriters and whatnot in situations where the thing that we need most fundamentally we haven't got, and we just have to use all the other skills and judgments that we've got to work around that. But in an ideal scenario, we will try and create a system through the things that we can sell to a client at the beginning of a project that gives us those things, that gives them a better product and makes our life fun. It's so much easier when you've got this stuff.
And so much easier.
I wanted to add one more thing. Probably a lot of people will think that but all this process needs time, and you need time to do all of this. But just one thing, I've got more than 15 years of experience with web design. And before we started to do things that way, when Paul used to send me brief, I needed few days, about week, to create design for website we need. Now, when Paul sent me a brief with every proper brief and with wireframes, I am able to create this design during my lunch break.
Mm-hmm. And the truth is, I don't send Peter that brief. Lindsay sends Peter that brief, and our briefs have got, that I will give to Peter for doing design work are hugely better because I've assigned to Lindsay to do proper user, journeys, proper user personas, and she does those, and then I see the wireframes and I'm just blown away. I'm like, yeah, maybe my wireframes look a bit sexier, but yours have got proper information in. And so Peter has now said that he wants all the wireframes from Lindsay and doesn't want me to do any more wireframes. So, but that just shows it's true. When we can give something to Peter and I'm like, how did you get that done so quick? And it's because of this bit of work.
Because I got all the information I needed.
Lindsay did Lindsay did 1 day's work. Peter did half a day's work. The old way was Peter did an entire week's work, and the result was better with the shorter time.
What would be, we've gone over an hour. This was meant to be like 45 minutes and we're well over an hour.
We should wrap up because now you've got a state of the word show.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, it's been postponed, thankfully.
Okay.
Yes, what would be really interesting, I don't know if you can, or, you're going to have to kill us after you do it, but it would be great to see some of your wireframes, because that's where I'm weakest at, because I'm just used to going straight to the design, and sometimes I'm making myself stop, because as you say, you don't always do it either, but that bit, I think, is what makes it more powerful, I think. And that's what I never do for my own projects. And then what happens with my own projects is that I go back after a month and completely break them up and I redo them from the beginning. And it's like, what if you had done the same process that you do with your own clients, you wouldn't have to do that. So so I don't know whether you are willing to share wireframes in the group, but that would be fantastic because I'm really interested in seeing
we will.
What they look like.
I mean, to be honest,
we're trying to build proper case studies for some of our projects. So there will be all the information. So we want to show how we gather information about product, about users, to show our whole process there.
That would be fantastic because and again, I think it will show lots of small people like us. So there's a couple of comments. I have some copywriters who want to write the wireframe I've set up. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg scenario. Which comes first? I think the copy.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the user persona comes first, and then the copy. It can be rough draft copy as well, but it just has to help the designer who isn't a copywriter,
because this goes back to to how the web was born, how a page structure or the web. It's all about typographical hierarchy.
Yeah,
the HTML structure, that's what it's about, and it comes from newspapers because that's what websites were at the beginning. They were newspapers. So it's the copy, and the copy should determine the design. Again, it's the most difficult thing to get, but Sherry, that's the answer, really.
Yeah, it's not even chicken and egg. I think it's definitely the copy.
Yeah.
But just the sad truth is we probably won't get that.
No.
So,
well, however, all the rest is something that not only anyone can do, however small the client, but actually I think that the smaller the client, the more advantageous this version of this process would be, definitely for the agency, but also for the client, who will then go, wow, I didn't know you could do this. Wow, oh God, this is actually useful, rather than being just a brochure, which is worth nothing, really.
It's one of the reasons we think that we should do wireframes and show the client wireframes, especially if they've got content in there, because at that point you can show a wireframe and present to them, whether you record a video of that or you see them in person, whatever it might be. you actually say, here's the wireframe, okay? What we did was we tried to come up with a user persona. We called that person Mike. Mike found your website through a search engine. He lands on this page. The first thing Mike see is this information here, because the thing about Mike is he hasn't got much time. He's got a busy job and this and the other. So we wanted to make sure that it was easy for him. Instead of the thing that everyone doesn't like, which is to all this like secret work, the client's wondering what's going on and losing love for you all of the time. And then you present a design and you say, what do you think? And
yeah, exactly.
Whereas if you showed them all this stuff that you did, you're like, we did this journey, we did this, you present that at the right time. You don't need to show them the user journeys. You don't need to show them all these things all the way through, because it might overwhelm your typical website client. But reference it all when you present the wireframe. Or if you're not doing a wireframe, when you've got the design that you've done, you can talk about all the reasons that went there. One of the things Peter wants to say,
in my opinion, when you're presenting designs to your client, then it's good time to show how much work actually went into this. So for example, if he will ask that, oh, I'm not sure about this text here or this button there or something like that, you can show him that according to your research, according to your flows and everything, it should be that way.
Yeah, exactly. So you
will have something to back up your ideas.
Absolutely. And this is another one of my mantras that I always say, is always have a reason for your design decisions.
Exactly.
It's never based on personal preference. So always be able to say, no, that button cannot be read, and this is why. And it's not personal preference. Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I piss Paul every time.
Yeah.
I ask him, why you put this here?
I know. I showed him a design like 2 days ago. It's the one I was talking about that I did in a quick time, and then she did the copy and then we did the wireframe and all this stuff. I was like, hey, check this out, because we'd used our Beaver Builder rows quite a bit on it. I was like, look, it's our Beaver Builder rows and it's really sped this up. And I was proud of this perfect process we'd done. And Peter just looked at the screen and he was squinting and he just said, why did you put that there? And I was like, and because truth is, he wasn't trying to say I'd done something wrong, but he is just used to asking questions about everything. So why is this here? Why is this here?
Yeah, if you want to be a good UX designer, you need to learn how to defend your ideas. And you cannot defend your ideas if you don't know why.
You know what? All the talks that I've been doing this year about design subjects, that's always my mantra. I always tell the audience, and you need to know this because you need to be able to tell your clients that's why you're doing it. Always I say that. So it's amazing that we're in. I love this. So can I just say, I think also, I just want to reiterate something that we said at the beginning, which is, let's not forget that UX, it's not just online, it's offline as well. Because when we're doing a website, we're helping business owners grow their business. And their business always has, I mean, as much as online it can be, it always has an offline component, always. So get them to think about that kind of thing as well, because there's a lot of businesses that actually build their it's like small things like sending, as we were saying, sending a handwritten card to every new client, things like this that constitute the whole of the user experience. So get them to think about that. They're going to love you even more because they're going to realize that actually you've given them much more than a website. If they thought they were coming to you just for a website, then they realize that actually you are giving them a better everything, a better business, basically. So that's what user experience is. It's and I'm looking at everything these days in terms of UX. It's fascinating. I posted a while ago, on Design for Geeks, this photo of it's a Spanish hospital in Bilbao in the north of Spain, where they've for kids, the kids ward, they take the kids to the operating theatre in little toy cars. Mm-hmm. And it's just the sweetest thing, because the kids always, they look happy and they're laughing, and it's just the sweetest thing. You think,
are happy.
This user experience.
The staff are happy. Everyone's happy.
it's design thinking, and as well as because it's empathy and it's user experience. So their hospital is not remembered necessarily just like somewhere horrible. It's somewhere where, you know, I got to drive a toy car. So they forget about the fact that they're having an operation. It's things like this. That's user experience. Or there was a photo on Twitter of, I can't remember who posted it, someone famous, but in the UX world, but it was a shop with 2 baskets. One basket had written on it, I want assistance, and the other one had, I don't want assistance. So you pick the basket where you don't, if you don't want to be bothered, because actually it is annoying sometimes, you pick that basket. That's user experience. So if you start thinking, putting your user experience cap on, then you will be able to advise your client on all these list of things, because often they're too close to the business and they don't see it. They don't, you know, they don't understand and think about it. They think in terms of, oh, I need to get more traffic, for instance. And you're like, no, you need to give your traffic something to do, come back for once they're on your site. So it's all things like this that I think really, really change it and make it. See, Shari is saying it's creating a marketing strategy, really, that gives a great experience, making clients and users feel special. Exactly. And that's how I sell the big, you know, $2,000 discovery session, because I call it a marketing strategy, because it is, you know, ultimately, even though I'm not a marketer, so maybe, but this is it is what it is. It's actually, it is marketing.
It is. Yep. And do you know, one final thing that I just wanted to say from my side of things, as the person who does a lot of the sales type of work in our business, is that as a result of doing this process, you've got so much more ammunition as such to make a client understand why, after the website launches, and you said, you know, this kind of MVP type approach, after this website launches, that we should review this in month 1, we should review this in month 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
you know, we all trying to, you know, in WordPress, we all want to sell WordPress care plans. And we're, you know, happy if we got, you know, $100 a month or something from that. But really, with the whole UX approach, once that website is live, you can start some of the process again, and you can test it. So you've got a reason, because you know that Mike wanted to go from A to B on this website. How many Mikes went from A to B?
Exactly.
And if lots of the Mikes weren't going from A to B, have a look at your traffic. And then you've got, you know, this thing that you can do with your clients, which is to continually be making adjustments to their marketing strategy, if that's what
Absolutely.
you want to call it, their traffic acquisition strategy, and the user flow on the website. You might discover, as usual, you know, there's that classic picture of a pavement that is at a right angle and then everybody walks diagonally across it.
Yeah.
UX removes a lot of the guesswork, but you've still got a lot of guesswork in there until you keep reviewing and going back. So if you find someone cutting across the pavement on your website and going diagonally across instead of the way that you thought they would, then you can respond to that and find that there's a new person called Dave who comes to the website who wants to go this way. And then you can create, and that's where, you know, thinking of Dave, that's where you kind of start talking about sales funnels on your website. So yeah,
absolutely.
funnels.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
There's a lot of similarities, isn't there, in the whole.
We're nearly at an hour and a half, which is outrageous.
Yeah. So
I want to say, before either of us or both of us release our own UX course, at the moment, if anyone wants to go deeper but really understand how it can be done as a 2-hour process, even, really, you can do it. There's Creative Live, which is this great sort of design and other stuff school. And there's a UX course by Joe Casabona. Did you get it in the end, Paul?
I think I got it on a super good deal.
So it was like $15. I spent I think it cost me $29 because I bought it at a different time. But I really, really highly recommend it, because he does the course is actually the video of him going through the process. It's brilliant. And he says specifically that he used to have huge budget clients, like millions of dollars, and then went to close that agency and started working with startups. He's in Silicon Valley. So normally startups don't have big bucks to spend. So he said, sometimes I don't even tell the client I'm doing UX.
No.
I just do it. It's part of, I just cannot not do it, but I do it, and I can do it in 2 hours if you want. You can do it in 2 hours. And he does it in 2 hours. Yeah. With the clients there, I think you can I do it with a client there now. Sometimes, especially the client is good for the user personas normally, because as we were saying earlier, often the business owner is the target client as well. So that's why it's interesting. But anyway, go to Creative Live, which is presumably creativelive.com, and look at the UX course by Joe Casabona. Highly recommended. Yeah. So I think we need to wrap it up, because it's been a long session. Well, usually it's 45 minutes, 2 people, an hour and a half, twice as long, clearly. So I cannot thank you enough. It's been amazing. And if you can, we'll liaise later as to how you can share your material, because we can't wait to see, because I'm just worried that if you do the case study, maybe a case study will come out in 6 months' time.
Yeah, well,
I don't want us to get wireframes earlier.
We've got some other things.
Yeah. So we'll see how we can share it to the group. And also I want to share things like my questionnaire and a sort of design thinking diagram. Yes, the link. I will, Patricia, about the I will, you'll get the link. So yes, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Piccia. It's been brilliant.
Such a pleasure. And maybe we'll reconvene to talk of a specific aspect once we've asked the group what they want, what they want to know more about. Okay, this was great. And again, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone.